Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of Unstoppable Success, the podcast. I'm your host, Jaclyn Strominger. And on this podcast, we hear from amazing people, leaders, influential people who have amazing insights on what it takes to have unstoppable success. And today, I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you to David Ask. And let me tell you a little bit about David. David, first of all, is a serial entrepreneur. He's got a couple of companies. He just launched one. Oh, and by the way, one of his companies is the companies that put the thermostat covers on, in the offices so that you don't have people like changing it. And I know you've got other probably people in your office who are like, damn it, I want to take that damn thing off. But again, that there's for a reason. And he just started a new company called Lockbox Pro. But he also works a lot coaching with Dr. Andy Garrett, True North Resiliency Program. So we've got a lot of great things to unpack today. So welcome, David, to Unstoppable Success.
I'm just really, truly thrilled to be here with you today. Like I mentioned just briefly, I love hanging out with people who are, just for the entrepreneur, right? The people that are kind of living on the edge and leaning in and stumbling forward and figuring it out. And yeah, it's just really glad to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm so and rightfully glad to have you as a guest. So talk to us a little bit about, your journey. You're an entrepreneur and you're also a coach. You know, what are those nuggets that helped you drive and keep going as an entrepreneur? Because it's not easy.
No, it's not at all. And it's interesting. I think things have shifted for me. So, in my earlier life, so I'm 51 now. So in my earlier life, I think my motivations were, a bit more, oh, somewhat out of insecurity and mainly kind of extrinsically driven, as opposed to, this idea Seth Godin says people like us do things like this, right? This idea of intrinsically motivated, understanding what is it that I care about, what lights me up, my values, all those things. And I think early on, I just kind of wanted to not be a failure. It was more like, gosh, I just, or how about this? I wanted to become someone, or at least not be a nobody, that kind of thing. And, it's kind of handing the keys, as it were, to my identity to, the things that I largely had, no control over, and wanting validation from others and things. Not that some of that's not needed, and we can dig into that too. But I think as of late, in probably the last decade, as I've started hanging out with some folks and maturing, of course, on my own and putting some of the pieces together, the motivations, for why I get up in the morning and why I show up, have become so much more tied to just who I am, right? And what I value most of all in this life. And, we talk about, values, convictions, and desired impact, and what gives you goosebumps and what lights you up and things like that. And as I've gotten a lot more clear on, that place inside of me, it's so much more easy than to be motivated, from that place as opposed to, handing the keys to something or someone else.
Yeah, I love that. So what is your why?
So, it's interesting. I'm my values. I'm a man of faith, so I would say God is first. I love the word inspiration, but I feel like kind of top-down umbrella. There's there's so many wonderful things and beautiful things that have been woven into each and every one of us. And when we identify those things, right, the word identity, we just write those things down and operate from that place. It's amazing, how our why, starts to become more clear as opposed to, you know, in fact, I always say never start with why, start with who. So again, when you've identified all that stuff inside of you, your why becomes clear. So my why, largely, it's funny. I like to do things that are inspiring. I like to do things that are, whether it's, I don't care if I do some music, whether I'm doing a concert or I'm speaking in front of a group of people or participating in something. I like to do things that seem to be inspiring, and to me that means to breathe life into. Right? It's like I want to have conversations and I want to participate in things. Sometimes, by the way, the context, what I'm doing is almost irrelevant. It's my why is all about mainly that word inspiration to me, and I like people, I like impact, I like beauty and things like that. So if I'm participating in the things that are kind of described by faith, inspiration, beauty, wisdom, and impact, and kind of this other centeredness, it's amazing that how my why, as it were, really starts to bubble up no matter what I'm doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so I'm curious. So you said, like, things have changed, when you started your first company now.
Yeah,
I'm curious, how do you feel? Because listeners, if you don't know this, I'm going to drill it into your head. Life is a roller coaster. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster.
yeah,
It's highs and lows.
yep,
And sometimes you need to know when you're at a low to walk away because you're not aligned, and I can always share something about that.
sure.
But how did you change or with the different highs and lows from the first company you started to the second company or to
Yeah,
the company
so
that
well,
you
it's
like from,
really
I
yeah,
guess,
one company and different products, but
yeah,
yes.
right.
So I remember, so when I was first came out with the Stat Guard Plus, which is the world's first thermostat guard with a combination lock, I was doing facilities management for a large retail chain and covering, stores in 5 states and so on. And great, a great place to work, great people, that kind of stuff. But I knew there was something, kind of more, that I wanted to do with regards to that entrepreneurial bug, right? I grew up with a lot of people who had created jobs for themselves, right? But an entrepreneur typically has got, a few different irons in the fire, right? Multiple revenue streams,
Mhm.
and they're creating, in essence, time, right? They're creating some margin, in a lot of cases. And I loved the thought of that. Like that was something that, an itch I needed to scratch, as it were. So for years, I, was kind of wondering, well, what is that for me? And I remember when, in fact, my brother-in-law called me one day and he said, "Hey, where do I get a thermostat guard with a combo lock?" He goes, "Everybody keeps losing that tiny key." And of course, I was like, well, there's an idea because I experienced that in every single one of my retail stores in 5 states. Everybody, we all get the thermostat wars, right? Everybody's messing around with it. But guess what? They couldn't keep up with the little key. So it became a huge expense. So, long story short, he and I went into business together. I ended up buying him out, a couple of years into business, which was rather fortuitous because I got into Home Depot a year later. But it was, at the time, I'll be honest with you, to your question, I was really motivated by a lot of fear. I think it was like I just didn't want to be a failure and I wanted to be a success. And it was really about not looking foolish as opposed to, bringing the full weight of who I was to this business and everything else to be more of a creative, as it were, and somebody
Yeah.
who is just using this tool, this thermostat guard, to be a creative and to kind of move the needle in something. But I'll be honest, it became kind of an identity thing for me early on, and that was a heavy weight to carry.
Yeah. So then what about this company that you just started right now? I mean, Lockbox Pro. I
Yeah,
mean,
so that's a separate product actually within the same company. So
okay.
the first two, the StatGuard Plus, there's a variation in Home Depot, and then we have a variation in Lowe's, and then I just licensed a new version to Lennox for
Mhm.
the Pro channel called the Lockbox Pro, and that has a combo with a key option on it. So that's in Granger and HD Supply and a couple of Johnstone locations and so on. And we're yeah marching down the road of just increasing the distributorship in that area.
That's really great. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a really interesting question. You may want to, smack me for this, or at least
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting question. What made you buy out your brother-in-law?
Well, so it was interesting at the time. They had he and Anna had a baby and had another one on the way, and so he started a construction company. So he really, at the time, we were both kind of like, hey, let's lean in here. And honestly, it just was one of those things where he did not have the time to participate in the business that we started together.
Hmm.
So after, about a year of kind of having that rub, I was like, hey, it doesn't seem like this is a clear yes for you. What would you say if I just bought you out? And he was like, man, do it. Let's do it. So it was kind of a relief to him because I
Yeah.
think he was very successful in his commercial construction business. And I think this just seemed like a burden. So yeah,
Right.
again, I'm grateful that it
It's
worked
actually
out.
a
And
lack of alignment, right? Not to be interrupting you, but
yeah,
like
yeah,
there was an alignment shift, right?
yeah, yeah.
Like and vision shift. And part of it is, where are you spending your time and money? And I will tell you, for those of you that know me and have followed me, like just gave up a co-foundership of a company because we were not aligned.
Yeah.
And it's painful, but alignment and values are so important in where you
Yeah.
are. And and as you shared before, you're who, like who you are,
Yeah. Yeah, because
right?
yeah, if you don't, if you can't describe, again, just all the little intricacies that make you you, your why might be
Mhm.
somebody else's. It might have you might have a lens on it that is just not quite aligned with, who you are. And again, I think your why is absolutely important. We have to have that sense of motivation and why we're getting up in the morning. But if we start, again, describing our own souls, right, and how we're unique, how we're different from the person next to us, and it's so important to go there. You have to do a little bit of, deep work and some reflection to understand that.
Yeah, you really do. So now, the entrepreneurial journey, I mean, obviously you also work with, you know, Dr. Andy Garrett and that True North. I obviously, I like the name of that because that's kind of
Yeah,
similar to my book, Charting True North, where I co-authored that.
yeah.
Um, so talk a little bit about how those two things, how the entrepreneurship also aligns with the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I met Dr. Andy, it was in well, I'm currently in a mastermind group with other men. It's just a all men's mastermind group, and he was part of the group that I was in. And it was interesting at the time. I felt like, and I've used this phrase many times, I felt like he introduced me to myself,
Mm,
on such a deeper level. And, by asking really great questions and, and also, validating some of those things. Like even this morning, he sent me a text and he said, David, you're the most encouraging person I've ever met.
oh,
And I just thought,
so good.
man, so here's, I'll kind of get a bit personal here. So here's what's fascinating. You know, it, if you ask someone the right questions in the right progression, you can help them identify, right? The word identity,
Mhm.
everything that makes them them. I mean, it's such a practical, touchable process, but it's not everything. We what is it that actually is the detonator for someone to operate inside of that? So one of the other things that I'm doing, I'm writing a book for dads right now, and of course, a lot of it is helping raise. It's for fathers and sons, raise a son. What does that mean? Cause them to rise. We have such a vague understanding about ourselves and kids and, just kind of winging it and hoping they're not a jerk and they're successful or whatever that is, right? And I get it, right? We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants, but
Right.
here's the funny thing. The detonator is what? The detonator is love. The
Mhm.
detonator is holding up a mirror to your friends, to your children, to your spouse and saying, "Hey, do you see what I see?" And so quite often, especially with my kids, they're 20 and 19, they're grown. But I mean, I just had a really great talk with Parker a few minutes ago, and I just said, "Hey, Park." Um, he had a conversation with his friend the other day, and I was in earshot of it. And I told him, I said, "Hey, I just want you to know, when you challenged your buddy here, I could tell that came from a really deep place in you, that you really cared about, kind of, I didn't use the word alignment, but just, how, your relationship, and there was some discordance there. And I said, I want you to know, I really respect that. That's great.
Oh, I'm getting
So,
chills.
yeah. So what does love look like? Is it a hug and a kiss? Well, I sure hope it's a lot of that, but it's also, you know, like even you and I just met, right? Well, here's what's fascinating. I would like to say, Jaclyn, you showed up today honoring me by being so prepared, right? I've been on about 75 podcasts in the last 2 years, and I can't tell you how many times I show up and the podcasters just winging it. And I don't know why they're even doing a podcast. And I love the fact that you're super engaged. You've done some research on me and you're asking great questions. Like, what is that? I'm holding up a mirror to
Right.
somebody I just met. And for lack of a better word, loving them, right? It's validating, it's galvanizing, it's shining a spotlight on something that's just good. So
Right.
yes, we need the process of asking or answering the right questions, but again, we need awesome people around us to galvanize and to validate that stuff. That's just loving somebody. It's nice to say, "Hey dude, nice t-shirt or nice shoes." I mean, that's fine. But if you validate and shine a spotlight on someone's character, you change their life. And it's everything. So, so I feel like for me personally, running these businesses, and I'm actually now partner in a new company called Strategy Simple, where we're a data company, and it's kind of freaky. It's really mind blowing.
Yeah.
But what I'm
Data
finding,
can be, if it's about people, it
yeah,
can
yeah,
be, yeah,
yeah. It's so. But here's the funny thing, right? It's again for me, it's just a context to
right,
experience people. I mean, I heard somebody say the other day that in life you have people and you have junk. I mean, the entire world, the entire everything is about relationships. So if your career and if your, your mission, if your true north, right, is about the flourishing of the people around you, who cares what you're doing as long as it's something that you generally enjoy.
right.
There's going to be bumps in the road and everything, but it's the relationships are what make everything matter. If it's not relationship driven, nothing matters. So it's
I couldn't have said that better. Like I actually, I call it relationship capital. And
yeah,
so, right, so what can you do with the relationships that you have? It's not about always making new ones. It's about cultivating the ones that you do have.
yeah,
And some of those are going to go into buckets of friends, some of them are going to go into buckets of business colleagues. Some of them
sure.
can become partners. And some of them can just be people that you know, like, and trust that you want to refer to because
Yeah.
whatever. But so there's different buckets, but again, it's about that relationship and how you can pour into people detached from the outcome. Don't
Yeah.
think, right? Don't think about what you can gain from it. Think about what you can give to it,
Yeah.
right? It will
Yeah.
come back to you in spades. I mean, God, I mean, I always think, Bob Berg, who's been on this show too, I mean, he wrote the book Go Giver, right?
Yeah. It's a
Like,
fabulous book.
right? I mean, it's a cult book, right? It's a great book, but be the giver.
But and to your point, it's a law like gravity, right?
Yeah,
If I don't care if it's marriage or whatever else, if you show up with this idea of being other centered, it's a law like gravity. It just comes back. It's not karma. I don't believe any of that stuff. I think it's just a law like gravity. It's the way God made everything. It just works. It's
right.
beautiful and touchable. Hey, one thing that I love the fact that, obviously I'm using that True North language with Dr.
Yeah.
Andy, and you wrote a book, with the True North in it. Here's what I think is fascinating. One of the biggest shifts that I think I experienced was when I started to understand magnetic north versus true north.
Mhm.
You walk into a room and magnetic north is like a compass, right?
Mhm.
And we often say, we have got to have that compass to, head true north. Well, it's a fascinating, I'm not sure, metaphor here, if that's the right word. Every one of us, when we launch into a day or we walk into a room, unless we understand true north, we're using magnetic north. And what is that? A magnet, a compass starts to read the room. It's
Yeah.
reading the magnetic field around it in order to try and find north. Whereas what? True north is a fixed set of coordinates. It's
Right.
GPS coordinates. So what do I want to operate as a compass inside of me, trying to find true north and reading the room and be like, well, where do I belong here? Or do I want to enter a room or a day or a year for that matter, understanding someone like me does things like this and
Mhm.
and removing all that bouncing back and forth and extrinsic kind of motivation. And it's a fascinating paradigm shift, to go from magnetic north, where you're just reading the room, as opposed to true north.
Yeah, I know. I love what you just said with that because it's one of the things that I think is so important. I don't have never put it to the terms of magnetic north, but I usually talk about more about your vibe and your energy, right? The
Hmm.
energy that you bring or that people bring into a room and how you show up
Yeah,
really matters, right? So,
yeah,
and and listeners, I think this is I really want you to take this point because if you want to have unstoppable success, as David is saying, you know, know your who, know your why, but also understand the vibrations that you are bringing into a room, and because that vibration is going to help you attract the right people. right? And it's and for lack of a better word, repel the people that don't belong in your world. And it's so important. But it's also really important, I think, to know like you can shift your energy. Like you don't, you could wake up in the morning and have a crappy morning, right? Like you could wake up and be like, "Oh my God, this isn't a great day." You can do things throughout the day to shift that energy, to turn it around. Just like before you walk into a room, if you're about to meet people that you've never met, check your energy at the door. Is it where you want it to be? If not, do a couple of exercises to get yourself in the right energy.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. My experience is for me, it's more about just remembering what is
Yeah.
true. And
Yep.
it's a funny thing because I feel like, in the Bible it says the truth sets free. Well, the reason that I'm feeling out of alignment or my energy is bad or whatever it is because I have decided to take the keys back, and think that I'm the captain of my own ship and it's all up to me and I'm on my own and all that kind of stuff. Where no, I actually believe I've got a guiding light. I believe I have people around me that love me and support me. I've got a team. Literally, I have a band of brothers that if I need counsel, if I need support, I can call them at any time. I remember when I was started writing the book for dads, I asked Dr. Andy, I said, "What's the number one job of a father?" And he said something I didn't expect, but it's reverberated into so many other areas of my life. He's very quickly, he said, "Oh, it's just to remove as much uncertainty as possible."
Hmm.
And I'm like, uncertainty. And it's amazing, on any given day uncertainty, fills us, right? It's like, oh my gosh, fear kind of takes over and in essence, you have question marks, right? So if like to your point with this, the kind of the energy language there, if you walk into a room with a bunch of question marks, you feel it. But guess
Hmm.
what? Everybody else around you does
Right.
too, right? So
Yep.
so so how do you remove those question marks? Again, it's doing some deep work on the front end and then realigning to that true north. It's, man, you know what? I believe these things are absolute bedrock, to my soul and getting really clear on that stuff. And not that we're autonomous, right? I mean, largely, but we got to have some support and all that kind of stuff. We're made to be loved and supported, and in the counsel of many, there's safety and all that stuff, right? But at the same time, you have to understand the language that describes your true north. And if you have question marks around that, good luck. I mean, talk about a roller coaster ride that you don't need to be on.
Right. Right. No, it's so true. So talk to me a little bit about, one of the things, when it comes to, working with other people and coaching people, how are you going about um meeting people where they are and and then like where do you see them going, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So, it's interesting. I remember when I started taking some coaching training. It's not what I thought it was. I just for some reason I was still kind of under the auspices that coaching and consulting or we're similar. And it's fascinating, where the true coaching model is kind of what you said. You enter into a relationship with someone, walking shoulder to shoulder, right?
Hmm.
You're not face to face when you're coaching. It's, they're not looking to you for answers. That's a
Yeah.
consultant, right? That's a
Right.
therapist or whatever. So as coaching is like, hey, describe where you're at right now and describe where you want to go and even how do you want to get there? And it's amazing when you have a friend, right? I mean, coaching is just being a really great kind of a skilled friend. It's coming alongside and just saying, let's get really clear on where you are right now. Like what's working, what isn't, where are the question marks? And then, the old magic wand question, right? It's like if you could, a year from now or 2 years from now, you know,
Right.
money aside, whatever, who is that person? And what are they doing? What are they participating in? And who are they surrounded by? And start to paint a picture of, what, the definition of success, right? And then here's what's even more interesting is a lot of people then make the mistake of jumping in and start giving a bunch of advice on how to get there. And then the person doesn't have ownership of it, right? It's like, well, okay, I guess I could do all these things, but unless they come up with their own answers to how do you want to get there,
Right.
probably not gonna happen. So I think it's really important then to, kind of slow down even further at that point and give someone space, hold space for them and ask the right questions with a lot of
Yeah.
margin and a sense of curiosity. It might take weeks to understand what does it look like after I kind of decompress a little bit to
Right.
take some steps that activate things in me, bring maybe some resources, people around me to help me get there. Whatever that might look like. It's amazing how people quite often they don't need information. They just need someone to walk with them and hold some space and they come to their answers themselves because most of the time we know exactly what we want, what we need to do.
Right. And and I love that, right. It's true. Like, the therapist versus the coach versus the consultant. I mean, and I think this is a really interesting thing. You have to be able to ask the person as a coach, you have to be able to say, would you like to brainstorm a couple of different
Oh, love
ideas,
that. Love
right?
that. Yeah.
Let's brainstorm some ideas. Here's a few
Yeah.
things that I'm thinking about. Tell me what you think, so that you're not necessarily giving them, or you have to then say, okay, I could say to you, David, I'm going to put on a different hat right now. I'm going to put on the consultant hat, and I'm going
Yeah.
to share with you, here's a couple of things, here's a couple of things, right?
Sure. Yeah.
That I may have that I could suggest, but you tell me what one resonates the best with you.
Yeah.
And then you tell me how you want to apply it. So then it becomes theirs, right? But
Yeah.
it's true, like people have to take ownership, even if you're giving somebody, and I find this so fascinating. How many times have you seen companies hire consultants, right? Spend a boatload of cash, yay, for the
Yeah.
consultant.
Yeah.
The consultant hands them a book. Okay, here's what I recommend.
Yeah.
And then they do nothing.
Yeah. It's crazy. And that's one of the things that Dr. Andy and I do is, we work with not just one person, we'll work with the entire team so that every single, in essence, what are we doing? We're introducing them to themselves
Right,
so that they can operate, in alignment with their own core, right? We talk about core values, right? Well, what does your core happen to value most of all in this life? If you don't know what that is, I mean, good luck. So
right.
we do a lot of, just kind of some of that work. And that now, what does it look like for you to bring that best side of yourself to this operation? And in fact, the leadership team, when they start understanding the things that really light their employees up and their strengths and all of that stuff, it's amazing how they can shift some seats on the bus even to move the mission along.
Yeah,
And but I think it's the individual is so unique and so important. And if there's disalignment or unalignment there, it's a lot of discord and chaos.
yeah. Okay, so here's my question. I'm curious to ask, if you could give somebody one tip, whether they're on the entrepreneur roller coaster or what would it be?
So yeah, the first thing that comes to mind would be um, surround yourself with the right people.
Get in the
Here's
right
what's
rooms.
fascinating. Again, a law like gravity. Those of us who have children know one of our biggest fears is that our kids will get caught up in the wrong crowd,
Mm.
right? I mean, we will go to absurd lengths. I
Right,
mean, change school districts, whatever we got to do to keep our kids away from, the thugs, right? But we don't do that for ourselves for some reason. And I'm not saying we need to, block out people groups, right? You need to be helping folks, but the inner circle, the people that you have in your corner that you let into those rooms in your heart and your mind to see, to see the humanness of you and love you in spite of that, you need to have at least two people in your life that are for you like a hurricane and they're slow to speak, right? They ask great questions and they just encourage you. I mean, you don't want a bunch of people giving you stupid advice. I mean, you got to be really careful who you surround yourself with. And I think we become like those folks. So I think it's really important.
I absolutely love that. I'm so glad that you said that for so many different reasons. Okay, so David, how can people get more of your greatness, learn more about your products? Because, of course, I think they're actually fantastic.
Thank
What is
you.
the best way to get in touch with you?
You know what? So I'm actually launching a new website soon, but right now I would say, so I'm the guy that actually recorded the song Open Arms by Journey, but I did it in English and Italian. So I have a website right now, which is David, my last name is actually Osk, but it's spelled like
Okay.
ask. So davidoskmusic.com.
I apologize. I should have
No, no, no,
asked.
no.
David
That's
Ock.
okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty. Yeah, I get that all the time. And of course, if somebody needs a thermostat guard, you can go to Home Depot and Lowe's and find the one with the combo lock on it. But it's yeah, I love to say my favorite quote, by the way, and I always try to get this in is by Benjamin Disraeli. He says the greatest good you can do for another is not to share with him your riches, but to reveal to him his own. And I feel like that's my mission in life. So if there's somebody out there that I can help in any way, no strings attached, find my website there and let me know and I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, listeners, please do me the favor. I'm going to put the his all of his contact information, whether he wants it or not, LinkedIn, social media, his social links in the show notes. So please do me the favor and reach out to David and connect with him because truly is a unique blessing to the world. And then
Thank
please
you.
do me another favor. If you have any interest in having unstoppable success and would like to take a couple of courses, even getting in the right rooms, we have a brand new school community called Unstoppable Success. So please go and click in the show notes, or you can go over to school and search Unstoppable Success. First 100 people in there are going to get in for free. So get in there now. So go to school, find my new community, Unstoppable Success, and join. And then please share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, and other business associates who you know need and want unstoppable success. Thank you, David, for being an amazing guest. And thank you, listeners. I'm Jaclyn Strominger, your host, and this is the Unstoppable Success Podcast.